being checked with handheld metal detector wands. But critics contend those searches are not really random, but rather target minority students. The Board of Los Angeles Unified School District has directed the superintendent to develop an alternative plan for school safety that's fair, less invasive, and doesn't make students feel like criminals. Kathleen Maloney, Fox News.
Gay activists have decided that June is so-called Pride Month. You may have noticed the rainbow flags waving here and there. Steve Jordahl reports a pastors group in Tennessee is making sure children at a public library are left out of the indoctrination.
A public library in Putnam County, Tennessee, about 80 miles due east of Nashville, put up LGBT flags and highlighted gay-themed books for kids for the month of June. Dale Walker of the Tennessee Pastors Network says his heart sank when he saw the display.
They had multiple books that was LGBTQ friendly. In the children's section, this is what's so disturbing, is that in the children's section, a bit different deal if it was in the adult section.
Walker brought his concerns to the staff at the library, and after some discussion, they removed the display and set up a new one that celebrates families and togetherness. Walker says he had help from some fellow Christians who spoke out along with him.
They should be able to. They're taxpayers. They pay taxes just like everybody else. Why should they let less than 5% of the people control a entity like a public library and turn it into indoctrination centers? It ought to be a neutral environment.
But despite the success in Putnam County, Walker says libraries around the country remain battlegrounds with events like Drag Queen Story Hour and displays during Pride Month and beyond.
As Christians, we have to be proactive and not reactive. So next year, and in these times when we know these things are coming up, we've got to be proactive on this stuff and pay attention to what's happening in these locations that the LGBTQ is using for indoctrination centers.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com and on the One News Now mobile app.
Holy Spirit speaks to everybody. The problem is most folks don't listen.
Lonnie Poindexter.
If they do listen, they don't take it to heart or they get fearful or whatever. But when you listen and act upon it, wonderful things happen. And because a man of God heard the voice of God and acted upon it, it blesses me today. And you as well for listening in.
Lion Chasers. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk. She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
The magic wand is common sense. It's experience. If you're going to be in charge of the world's most powerful nation and economy, how about have done a little something before becoming the leader of the free world? I don't know. Doesn't seem that novel. How about if you're going to create jobs? Wouldn't it help if you actually have created jobs in the past? I hear brilliant guys like Joe Biden. The government has failed you. Government has failed you. I go, wait a second. Joe, I actually agree with you. Government has failed them. The problem is, Joe, you've been in government for almost 50 years. If government failed you, maybe you're the problem.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Well, that bit of smoke and hot fire was Don Jr. behind the podium for his father last night for the campaign launch. And I got to tell you, I knew it was going to be great. I knew that the people were not camped out for nothing. And boy, was I not disappointed. It was a fun night. Melania showed up in this yellow outfit, this like jumpsuit that was like something out of I've never seen before. And it just kept on going from there. It just kept moving. And so it was so exciting. It was a lot of different things. The president surprised me in the detail that he went into. And we have a little bit of audio for you where he actually goes into his financial statement. He brought it up on stage with him. He brings it out. He starts reading from it. And, previously on this show, we have reported that the president had suffered a little bit financially by becoming the president because certain businesses didn't want to do business with him anymore. And so his company was experiencing a little bit of a contraction. And since that report, I just hadn't thought any more of it. I knew it was a sacrifice that the president made willingly. He did that knowingly. He knew that it could jeopardize his business. He did it anyway. But he actually shares with all of us the details of like what he's working with right now. And it's impressive. Now, remember, on this program, obviously we respect capitalism. We feel it's the only free market system, the only system of private contractual relationships between individuals and corporations and the like, and even governments, that yields the most opportunity for individual prosperity and for us to actually receive the fruit of our labor and to grow the fruit of our labor and to be responsible for it. But money isn't everything. And so it's not that money is the root of all evil. It's the love and worship of money that is the root of all evil. So we recognize money for what it is. It's a tool. And it is also compensation for labor, for your time, your creativity, your energy, everything like that. But it's not, being a Christian doesn't mean we can't recognize when someone's successful or that we can't respect that success and use it as a predicate for what could happen in the future. It is a hallmark of individuals who are successful that they usually go on to continue to be successful. There are obviously exceptions to this rule. So it's just a fascinating glimpse into the inner workings of the president, because even though he's the president, commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces, CEO of this country, he's also still a businessman. And while he's not actively managing his corporation, his sons are, and they're keeping him apprised of what's going on. And the bottom line for Trump, the company, is the bottom line for Trump, the man, the husband, the father, and ultimately the president of the United States, at least for the next 18 months or so, and possibly for the next 4 years after that. So today on the program, welcome Stacy Washington, host of Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. And we have Hans von Spakovsky on today. He's going to join us here in just a little bit, next segment, to talk about the Democrats in the House ignoring facts so that they can incorrectly cite members of the Trump administration for contempt. Now, this is just another mechanism for keeping the Mueller report alive. It's a dead, rotting carcass, and they're still sprinkling it with holy oil and smelling salts and trying to just revive it and pumping it with that, the machine, the cardio machine that like zaps you and brings you back to life. They're just zapping it until no end, flogging it to death. But there's some interesting points that, of course, Mr. von Spakovsky has coming from the Heritage Foundation. They have all the best details. So we'll chat with him. There's also some information about the Dow surging after the president indicated that while he's at G20, he's going to be meeting with the leader of China on the sideline. And Mr. Kudlow had some interesting comments on how often the counterparts, not at the presidential level, but the counterparts below the president's level, actually interact on a regular basis. So it's not like they're waiting for the president to meet with the president of China as if that's the only communication. Maybe the media would have us to think that, but that's not the case. So there's two issues I want to dive into today. Bella Thorne, who, if you don't know who she is, welcome to the crew. I didn't know who she was until I saw that Whoopi Goldberg was trending on Twitter. And she's had some health issues. So I immediately clicked through because I thought the worst and was pleasantly surprised to see, because even though I disagree with Whoopi Goldberg on so much, I don't wish her ill. I don't want anything to happen to her. I mean, come on. I'm not going to make a comparison there. You can go with the ... So Whoopi Goldberg had actually made some comments about Bella Thorne because she's been in the news because she took some unclothed, undressed photographs of herself and sent them from her phone or some other social media device, some other online mechanism. She sent these photos of herself to her boyfriend. And then hackers went to the cloud and they've hacked into the cloud addresses of a lot of other women in Hollywood, models, etc., music industry, elites. And they're always looking for these nude photographs. And so they did the same thing to Bella Thorne. And I did check because I was like, I don't know who this woman is. Well, she has millions of followers online. And apparently with the younger set, she's very, very like she's the thing. So, and she's written a book that's been #1 about her experiences as a child, sexual abuse, et cetera, et cetera. So after looking into that to see like, who is this person? I'm wondering, well, what is her having her account hacked have to do with Whoopi Goldberg? Well, Whoopi's on The View, and she made some comments about what she felt when hearing of this story. Now, I normally, when I cover Whoopi Goldberg, whenever I mention her on the show, I'm disagreeing with her about politics, but broken clock syndrome is in full effect today. You know, even a broken clock is right twice a day. And this is an interesting thing because this isn't the new Whoopi that we've seen of late, the political Whoopi. This is the common sense mom and grandma Whoopi, who knows a few realities that our young people have not learned. And I'm going to first, before we hit play on this audio, I want to make it clear. It is the responsibility of parents, men and women, fathers and mothers, to teach their children about the sanctity of the human body. The body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. If you're not a Christian, you should still respect your body. You should still keep it to yourself. And it's our responsibility to teach these things to our kids. Now, once they're out of the house, like Bella Thorne is, she's a grown-up and she's a young woman and she makes decisions on her own, then what happens is ultimately her responsibility. But the normalization of pornography, of divorce, of alternative lifestyles, and the degradation of morality in our culture have left us in a place where Whoopi Goldberg making the following statement has brought her under close scrutiny and backlash simply for uttering statements that fall in the realm of good old common sense. It's #3.
If you don't put them, if you don't take them and put them in, listen, if you're famous, I don't care how old you are, you don't take nude pictures of yourself
because... But she only wants to share with one person.
But she should, listen, when they're hacking you, they're hacking all of your stuff. So whether it's one picture or a million pictures, once you take that picture, it goes into the cloud and it's available to any hacker who wants it. And if you don't know that in 2019, that this is an issue, I'm sorry, your age does not, you don't get to do that.
But why not?
You don't get to do it.
So the conversation that the ladies of The View are having at the table is whether or not Bella Thorne, well, Whoopi first just introduced the story and then they launched into a discussion. And it was kind of like Joy Behar cracking jokes about how if she were Bella Thorne's age and had the same body, she would post nude pictures of herself as well, because she always trivializes every topic. And it was, you know, some people laughed and et cetera. And then they moved on a little bit. And Meghan McCain shared that she would have sent nude pictures because it's a rite of passage and all young people do it, which my eyebrows were up in my hairline because I'm like, Meghan McCain believes that. She even quoted Rihanna. She said, Rihanna said, if your boyfriend doesn't get nude pictures from you, then she feels sorry for him. This is the culture our kids are swimming in. Okay. So, and to act as if this isn't what they're facing, that your son, if you have a teenage son, you ought to know girls have already sent nude pictures of themselves to him, unless he's in a very, very closed off environment. That's happening. That is happening. And I know I have a teenage son. Ding, ding, ding. And if you have daughters, you need to know that they're under pressure from the boys in their environment to do it. And with Rihanna making statements like that, and that information, when she says something like that, that goes straight into the same way we get all of our stuff from, if you like Fox News or if you like One American News or you love AFR, and when we issue news, you get it right away. They get that news, that kind of, it's an announcement. It's basically a pressure point for kids. Rihanna says every boyfriend should get these, not husbands, boyfriends. And it's a whole nother conversation that segments of information we've covered before, and we will delve into again about how it is. Imagine how many problems you avoid if you save sex until the marriage bed. That means you're saving any pictures too. And if you are married to the person, you don't need to send them pictures. So, and I saw excuses. Well, it's, you know, we have long distance relationships, but are you married? And she made the point that if you put it in your phone, it goes into the cloud. If it goes into the cloud, anyone can hack into it. So you're basically saying, I'm going to put this out there and roll the dice and hope I don't get hacked. The common sense aspect of this is that Whoopi Goldberg made a statement that 10 years ago, nobody would have really disagreed with. It wasn't a woman's right to take nude pictures of herself and send them up into a cloud that she doesn't control. Joy Behar even said, well, you need to take the pictures, so why don't you just take the picture, print it out, put it in a frame, and give it to the boyfriend? And then Whoopi Goldberg pointed out that someone has to print the picture out for you. They keep a copy, and you get a copy. So there really isn't a way, unless you do photography at home, you develop your own images. And even then, you're still giving it to someone who can turn on you and share it with the world. So the issue here is people are trying to find a way around, basically a way to sin that doesn't expose them to the ramifications of what they've done. And there isn't a way. And I disagree with the idea that when Whoopi Goldberg makes the statement, people are saying, well, she's victim shaming. No, she's not. She's telling everybody else who hasn't made this mistake, look over here. This is what can happen to you. Don't do it. But also, she says if you don't upload them to the cloud, if you don't take them, then you don't have that chance of being hacked. That's true. But there's something deeper there that has to be switched on in a person. And that is a respect for themselves that says they don't need pictures of themselves naked in order to win or maintain the affection of their significant other. Purity from both sides mandates that one would respect the other. The man would respect the woman so much that he would say, I hope you're not planning on sending me any nude pictures because I don't want those from you. I want to protect you. I want to protect what we have. You see? So it's both sides. It's the man and the woman, the boys and the girls. It's the parents not teaching these kids what they need to know, ignoring social media, ignoring the impact of this culture that our kids are inside of. We are not inside it, but they are. And as much as we try to insulate them and protect them, if we're not arming them up and gearing them up for what is out there, then they are susceptible to this. And no one's perfect. Kids are going to make mistakes. But this is one that we can actually insulate our kids from by teaching them that marriage is the place for sexuality. And you are going to hear, now that I've said that, every time you hear me say something like that, you're going to see online, people will tell you, oh yeah, she's pie in the sky. She's Pollyanna. I've been told that on Headline News, on the Dr. Drew Show. This black psychologist, who admittedly is a very nice person, she's super, said I was Pollyanna because I believe in these kinds of really just respectful ideas towards ourselves. I'm not Pollyanna. I'm Stacy, and I believe what the Word of God says, and I know that His Word is true. And when we operate in obedience and teach it to our children, it doesn't return void. This was avoidable for Bella Thorne, and she shouldn't be crying and angry at Whoopi Goldberg for telling the truth. When we get back, we have Hans von Spakovsky. Stay there.
Here's Walker Wildman for Redeem Clean Laundry Products.
Not only do you get a great product and you get to obviously clean your clothes, get the stains out and use a multi-surface cleaner to clean your countertops and use the dryer sheets. You're doing all of this and the money's going to support the work of American Family Association.
Redeem Clean Laundry Products were developed by AFA supporters Len Ingram and Jim Duncan to assist in funding the mission of the American Family Association. Redeem Clean products work as well as or better than other products on the market. They're environmentally safe, biodegradable, and they're made right here in the United States.
The great thing about Redeem Clean is not only is the product great, but it goes to support a great cause, and that is the work of American Family Association.
For clean laundry and a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Visit redeemclean.afastore.net.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. I once asked the president of a very large, complex organization, how do you keep it all together? How do you stay on top of all of this? He looked at me and said, Crawford, the weight is too much for me to carry. That's why I have to give it all to Him. He said, if I take my eyes off the Lord, I would be crushed by the load. It's sobering to remember that God doesn't give us merely difficult tasks. No, God gives us impossible assignments. Solomon was very much aware of that when he was installed as king. Can you imagine filling Papa David's shoes? Listen to Solomon's words in 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 7 through 9. And now, O Lord my God, thou hast made thy servant king in place of my father David. Yet I am but a child. I do not know how to go out or come in. and thy servant is in the midst of thy people, which thou hast chosen, a great people who cannot be numbered or counted for multitude. So give thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, to discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of thine? Solomon expressed several things in this prayer. First, he admitted, God, I'm inexperienced. I don't know what I'm doing. Then there was a general acknowledgement of the enormity of the responsibility. This is a great people with a great heritage, and I'm out of my element. And finally, and this really was the essence of his cry to God, God, I need wisdom. Will you give me what I need? Well, here's what I want you to remember today. God loves it when we're completely dependent on him. What makes us competent to lead is the realization that we desperately need God.
Crawford Loritz is Senior Pastor of Fellowship Bible Church in suburban Atlanta, Georgia. For more information, go to livingthelegacy.org.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. You can find out more at stacyontheright.com and afr.net, and of course, our news site at onenewsnow.com. It's my pleasure to welcome Hans von Spakovsky. He's the manager of the Election Law Reform Initiative at the Heritage Foundation. Hey, thanks for joining the show today.
Sure, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you again. So I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about this whole you're in contempt. Like, remember when Oprah gave the cars away to the audience and she was like, you get a car. The Democrats are like, you're in contempt. It's like senseless.
Yeah, what you have going on is really just political theater. And the difference between this and what's gone on before is explained by political theater versus substance. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. Look, the first attorney general in U.S. history held in contempt was Eric Holder. Why? Because when we discovered and it was revealed what was going on with Operation Fast and Furious, in which the Obama administration basically allowed a gun-running operation to go into Mexico, which resulted in the death of an American border agent. When Congress started investigating that, the Justice Department refused to hand over documents and information about it, and that's why he was held in contempt. So that wasn't political theater. That was substance. Congress trying to find out about the most reckless law enforcement operation the Justice Department's ever conducted. Compare that to what happened just a week ago. The House Oversight and Reform Committee, that's chaired by Elijah Cummings, voted to hold Attorney General William Barr and Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross in contempt. Why? Well, you probably know, Stacy, right now there's an active court case in front of the U.S. Supreme Court over adding the citizenship question back onto the U.S. Census. In fact, we're waiting for a decision from the court. It may come out as early as tomorrow. Well, Elijah Cummings, Democrats are very upset over the fact that the court may rule that a citizenship question can be added back into the census. So they've been investigating this and have demanded all these documents from the Justice Department and the Commerce Department on the decision and why it was made to do that. DOJ has already turned over to them, if you can believe this, 17,000 pages of documents. So you must be wondering, well, if they've done that, why would the Democrats hold Barr in contempt?
Yeah.
Well, because what Barr didn't turn over was a internal legal analysis, which is a privileged document. You know, this is the Justice Department's legal analysis of the case, which is active right now, and how they should defend it. It's the equivalent of the NFL telling one of the teams the night before the Super Bowl, you have to make public your game plan with all of your plays before you play the Super Bowl tomorrow. That's what's going on because Cummings and them want to get this internal legal analysis into the hands of the challengers, the state of New York, the liberal groups that have sued over this
Right.
So they can try to use it to derail the decision that the Supreme Court's going to come out
So it's
with.
backdoor discovery, right, Hans? It's just backdoor.
Yeah. I mean, it's totally unreasonable for them to demand a document like that is a privileged document. That, by the way, the plaintiffs in the lawsuit that's before the Supreme Court, they tried to get this document in the court case, and a federal judge said, "Hey, you're not entitled to this."
Okay, so one of the things that really gets to me about all of this, it's just weird. It's like, and I've seen this behavior from adults before, so I shouldn't mischaracterize it as, oh, it's only kids. You know what I mean? Like the kids hear no,
Right.
and they just keep coming back. They'll circle around a different way. They'll present the question a different way. Like kids do that, but adults do it too. Like this is not abnormal for adults to be unable to comprehend the word no. Some people actually think that that's a good characteristic, that you're dogged, that you never give up, et cetera, et cetera. But this is different because this is in the face of the American people, and it's a waste of time. The census question, as I understand it, has already been asked before in two different kinds of ways. One was on an actual census until it was removed, and then it was also asked they have a long form questionnaire that the census takers do that a much smaller cohort of the population takes, and the census question was on that longer form. So fewer people took it, but they answered it as a part of the long form questionnaire. So really, it's not an issue of it being racially motivated or anything untoward to add it back in. It just means that Democrats will lose representation if illegal aliens decide not to answer the question and don't take the census.
Yeah, and I mean, you're absolutely right about that. And that question, that citizenship question, as you said, it's currently on the American Community Survey, which is the survey that the Census Bureau actually sends out all the time, not just every 10 years, and was sent out constantly during the Obama administration. But you didn't see any of these groups protesting over that. What this boils down to, and it really makes you wonder, is all these groups on the left who have tried to stop this, they don't want actually accurate information about the number of non-citizens in the country. And what does that tell you about that?
Well, I'll tell you what it tells me. So we covered a story that I caught over at One American News Now that they were talking about during the Obama administration. He actually told the IRS to stop sending, there's like an automatic hit back that happens when an employee submits their tax return and their information doesn't match the tax ID number, the Social Security number or whatever. So what happens is, in addition to dinging the actual person and letting them know that there's a problem with their return, they will ding their employer, and the IRS lets the employer know this person is working for you, but their tax ID number doesn't match their identification. And then that makes the employer, someone from HR will call you in and say, why doesn't your information match? Because this is now a problem for us. We need you to update your information, or the person might end up getting fired, right? Well, during the Obama administration, they stopped that. So now the Trump administration has restarted that engine back up, and they're doing it. And they're saying the first go round netted 49 million mismatches. So obviously some of those are Americans who have improperly filed their taxes. They don't know their tax ID number, or they're changing their identity and they haven't changed their tax information. But that's a minuscule number. The majority of that 49 million is going to be people who are in the country illegally from whatever reason, whether they're visa overstays or whatever they are. They're in the country illegally and they're borrowing someone else's tax ID number. 40 million? Let's just give 9 million to the wind. 40 million? We've been told 11 million for the past 20 years. That's why they don't want the census question.
Oh, look, I completely agree with you. And yeah, the official numbers are 11 to 12 million, but you know there are other estimates from other folks who say it could be as much as twice that, if not more. And one way for us to finally figure that out is for that citizenship question to be returned to the census. And by the way, the media has painted this as if this is something nefarious and unprecedented. The first time there was a citizenship question on the United States Census was in 1820, based on the recommendation of that notorious conservative, Thomas Jefferson.
So, I mean, it's funny because it's so weird, but what are the chances? Just give me the dirty, Hans. I got to know, because you would know. What are the chances that we see some kind of weird split on the Supreme Court and they actually side with the Democrats and kind of invalidate the ability of the U.S. government to determine how many people are here who aren't citizens of this country?
I actually think, look, it's dangerous to predict the Supreme Court, but I was actually there for the oral arguments in April when the case was before the Supreme Court, and based on the questioning, I think this is going to be one of those cases where we see a 5-4 split. I think the government is actually going to win this. I think it's going to be the 5 conservatives versus the 4 liberals saying, yes, the government can ask a citizenship question on the U.S. Census.
That's kind of how I feel about it. Obviously I wasn't there, but I did listen to a little bit of, how they put the oral arguments on the SCOTUS blog. And so I listened to a little bit, and I thought they sounded as if they were kind of incredulous that they even had to hear it. But that brings me to another question that's kind of, it's tangential to this, but I just keep wondering, and you are an attorney and you do go before the Supreme Court. Why are they punting these cases about the, like the last case was about sweet cakes by Melissa, and she'd been fined $135,000. And instead of hearing her case, they kicked it back to the lower court and had them reconsider it in light of the Phillips
case.
Yes, the Jack Phillips case.
Yeah. No, look, this was not a loss for the bakers, because in essence what the court did is they were telling the Colorado court, you need to reconsider your decision and you need to follow the decision that we, the Supreme Court, issued in that Colorado case. And I can tell you what that means is that they're basically telling the Oregon court, you'd better reverse your decision, which found against the bakers. Because by doing that, Colorado, in essence, was thumbing its nose at the Supreme Court and not following that prior Colorado decision. Here's what will happen. If in the reconsideration the Colorado court doesn't do that, if they don't reverse their decision and instead uphold the finding against and the fine against the baker, then the case will come back to the Supreme Court, and this time the Supreme Court will take it and they will overturn it. But they're basically giving the court in Oregon the chance to correct the mistake that it made in finding against the bakers.
Okay, so I get that, but the issue that I have is, because I'm kind of more on the side of the lay person, which is the business owner. She's been fined $135,000, and if I'm not mistaken, they've gone out of business. So
they have gone out of business. All the costs of fighting the state drove them out of business, and it's pretty clear if you look at actually the evidence in the case that that's what the very biased, very partisan state government officials in Oregon, that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to drive these people out of business.
So would there be any recourse for them, or do they have to begin a whole new lawsuit to try to basically sue civilly the state government, the officials individually, what have you, to try to recoup some of their losses?
No, that would be a whole separate lawsuit, and that would be very tough to win. I think the main thing they hopefully will get is a reversal of what these government officials did.
They should move their business to Missouri, because all of us would use their stuff and we would help them get back on their feet. I mean, I'm just saying, idea. We're in the Midwest. You know how we are down here. Like, this is, right. we're just regular folk. We buy cake, we eat it. We don't try to force people to do stuff they don't want to do. They could make it here. And the cost of living is probably cheaper. Right. So in addition to going back to this Trump cabinet members in contempt, there was some joking around about the jail in the basement of the House. And, you know, Nancy made these comments. It was basically to up her cool factor. She knows where the jail is. We have a jail. But what is the likelihood of any actual repercussion coming to these Trump administration officials who are being found in contempt? Because Eric Holder didn't seem any damage or worse for the wear because of his.
No, look, when the House holds a government official in contempt, they basically have three options of what they can do. They can refer the contempt citation to the Justice Department. And the Justice Department has the ability to go, under federal law, to go to a grand jury and get the grand jury to indict the person, and you can be jailed for up to a year, and you can be fined for not giving Congress, whatever documents it wants. In the Holder case, probably no surprise, Stacy, the Justice Department refused to do that. They refused to file a criminal action against the Attorney General. The second alternative for the House is to on their own, go to federal court and file a civil case and ask a federal judge to enforce the contempt citation and order the witness to turn over whatever documents they want. That can be a long and involved process. They may lose that. The third option, and this is what they were joking about, although I guess we don't know how much of a joke it is it's recognized that Congress has what's called inherent contempt authority. And there are instances in our prior history where the Sergeant of Arms of the House, for example, was directed to seize and detain a witness who refused to answer questions or provide documents that Congress wanted, and to be held in a jail cell in the House until they cooperated and gave the House what it wanted. But that's only been done a couple of times in our entire history, and the last time it was done in Congress was about 100 years ago.
Oh, okay. Okay, so no chance of that. And it has to go through the these remedies have to go through the DOJ, which is currently controlled by AG Barr.
Yeah, well, the criminal case does. A civil case wouldn't go through DOJ. That would just be the House of Representatives itself filing a lawsuit in federal court and asking a court to enforce it.
So they go to one of their friendly courts and get that done.
Right.
What's the chance of them doing that?
I don't know. Right now, it's only the committee that has voted to hold Barr and them in contempt. You would have to go to the full House for a vote. And I wonder if the Supreme Court comes back with a decision tomorrow or Monday, those are the next 2 days where they'll release it. If they come back with a decision saying, well, the government has the power to do this, that might, frankly, end the Democratic efforts on this, because I'm not sure there would be any real point in them going forward with it when the Supreme Court has settled the case.
As always, Hans, we are so lucky to get you when you have time to be with us. It's always so informative, and we really appreciate your time. Hans von Spakovsky, manager of the Election Law Reform Initiative at the Heritage Foundation. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Talk to you again soon. All right. We'll be back with more after this. Keep it here.
Have you ever found yourself so embarrassed in a situation that you couldn't even look a person in the eye? One day, I was in the drive-thru of a famous fast food restaurant, and I was giving my order to whom I thought was a man, but turned out to be a woman. Oh my goodness. I found that out because I said yes, sir, and she quickly corrected me. I was so embarrassed, I couldn't even finish the order, so I drove off. That was a true story of fear and embarrassment. Deuteronomy chapter 31 verse 6 says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." My brothers and sisters, do not operate as I did and drive away due to fear creeping in. Know that the Spirit of the living God lives in you, and with Him, He can bring about that courage that you didn't even realize was already in you. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Victoria Hollyfield. Connect with us more at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Equipped with Chris Brooks.
This program is an apologetic endeavor. What I want to do is really train you in the art and science of defending and commending your Christian faith to people who maybe they've been hurt by the church, maybe they don't believe like you believe, and you're saying to yourself, how do I have an effective conversation with them? Well, we're looking for an evangelistic edge, if you will, that will allow us to more effectively, more contextualize the gospel so that we can reach men and women for Christ. Quite often, the on-ramp, if you will, is looking at culture and taking advantage of the conversations that folks are already having and saying, how can I leverage this to get people to talk about Jesus? This show becomes kind of massively significant to you if your desire is to reach people for Christ.
Get equipped with Chris Brooks.
Join me Monday through Friday at noon Central Time on Urban Family Talk.
Securing America.
With record high overdose deaths in the U.S., lawmakers are calling for a whole-of-government approach to fight the opioid crisis. Georgia Republican David Perdue says more needs to be done about cartels smuggling drugs into the country.
If a cartel was sending a cruise missile into Dallas, Texas, and killing 70,000 people, I think our response would be just a little less measured than it is today.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told the Senate International Narcotics Control Caucus the Trump administration has been cracking down on China, which he said produces many of the drugs smuggled over the Mexican border.
China fulfilled its pledge to President Trump to control all fentanyl-like substances, which potentially number in the thousands of different substances, and develop an enforcement plan for each of them.
Secretary Pompeo also said he hopes Mexico will work with the United States to help stop the flow of narcotics. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
I see the clown show Democrats, and I'm wondering, I don't know who they're fighting for, but it ain't Americans. No, it's not. How about this one? 3.2% GDP growth. You guys remember back in 2016 when my father said, why can't we have 2%? Why can't we have 3%? Why can't we do better? And Obama comes up. Well, Donald, there's no magic wand for that, Donald. You can't just make it happen. Well, abracadabra, buddy. There is a magic wand.
I love that. I love that from Don Jr. He makes the point that we've made here on this show. I've played you that audio before of Obama acting as if there's just no way the economy could improve. And in his mind, it couldn't. And so I remember last year when we did the Missouri tax documentary, I flew to Nashville and I sat with Art Laffer, who I think it's today, he receives the Congressional Medal of Freedom or the Presidential Medal of Freedom from the president for his work in economics and bringing free market ideas to just numbers of countries around the world that have changed their economies for the better, lifting 170 million people out of poverty at least. There may be even more. And so I was sitting with Art Laffer, and the question that I asked him was about kind of taking the lay of the land from the perspective of, you know, kind of viewing things in a pessimistic way. And he cut me off before the question was even out. And he said, Stacy, there's no reason to even do this work. There's no reason to do economics or finance if you're pessimistic. If you're a pessimist, you can't get anything done. He said everything in economics starts with a positive outlook. And you're looking to the future and you're looking to what can happen, to what you can do, and then you move from there. I mean, he was an eloquent speaker. He's especially well-versed on what certain economic policies do to our most vulnerable populations. So people who live in poverty, people who are disabled, people who are dependent upon government for services or health care, et cetera. And we had a really, really good interview. It was a privilege for me to get to sit with him. This is a man who he's met every single president of the United States since he's been an adult. And he has notes all over his wall, handwritten notes from everybody from Al Gore and Bill Clinton to Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan. He's been around just for ages, and he's been doing great work the entire time. And I know, of course, there are always detractors for conservative economists, but Art Laffer doesn't really see himself as a conservative as much as he sees himself as a positively minded free market thinker. And so it's such a wonderful thing to have gotten to interview him, and now he's getting this award. And it's just huge congratulations to him. But it goes back to what Don Jr. is expressing there. Someone in the audience yelled back, the magic wand is Donald Trump. And, you know, I don't know if I would say the president is the magic wand. I think it's his understanding of business and his tenacity in getting just a few things done. Deregulation and the passage of the tax reform bill, which is just the first bite. If he could have his way and make the tax cuts permanent and even reduce business tax further, you would see even more economic growth. And I know a lot of people are concerned. We're going to see inflation. We're going to see, yeah, you know what? That's not the outlook that you need. We should always be cautious, but you can't live your life only expecting the bad things to happen. Sometimes bad things will happen, but it doesn't mean you should live with the expectation that the bad things are just around the corner and it's horrible and we're just like one step away from recession. Well, I guess we could be. Anything's possible. But it's more likely that if the Fed doesn't act in a negative way towards the president to try to derail his reelection campaign, that there could very well be even more economic growth. And why not, right? So I thought that audio was fantastic. He had a lengthy time at the podium, and it was a great. If you didn't watch the live stream last night, it's everywhere. If you go to YouTube, you can find so many of the live streams of the speech last night. The president was up for a little over an hour. Sarah Huckabee Sanders was up for a couple of seconds, just thanking the crowd, getting a standing ovation. So nice. It was so nice to see her get those kudos. She deserves it. She deserves so much more than that. But I think she's going to get really what she's craving, which is time alone with her kids to just be herself and just be back at home in Arkansas. That's what's coming up for her, and I'm so excited about that for her. She deserves it. So now I want to listen to number 6. It's the president, and I teased this a little bit earlier. He's actually talking about, and it's a little lengthy, but it's worth it. He's talking about his financial statement. And he has it up there with him, and he's reading from it. And if you want to call in and kind of react to that, you can get in the call queue while we're listening to this. 866-963-2037, 866-963-2037. Oh, I'm getting notifications that the president is tweeting about the sad Democrats and other things. But let's listen to him from last night. This was the best of it, in my opinion, because this is such a glimpse into how he thinks and works when the cameras aren't rolling and he's not in the Oval Office, but from his time before up to now. It's number 6.
It was even reported incorrectly yesterday because they said he had assets of $9 billion. So I said, no, that's the wrong number. That's the wrong number, not assets. So they put together this, and before I say it, I have to say this. I made it the old-fashioned way. It's real estate. You know, it's real estate. It's labor, and it's unions good and some bad, and lots of people that aren't in unions, and it's all over the place, and building all over the world. And I have assets, big accounting firm, one of the most highly respected, $9,240 million. And I have liabilities of about 500. That's long-term debt, very low interest rates. In fact, one of the big banks came to me and said, Donald, you don't have enough borrowings. Could we loan you $4 billion? I said, I don't need it. I don't want it. And I've been there. I don't want it. But in 2 seconds, they give me whatever I wanted. So I have a total net worth, and now with the increase, it'll be well over $10 billion. But here, a total net worth of $8 billion. Net worth, not assets, not liability. A net worth after all debt, after all expenses. The greatest assets: Trump Tower, 1290 Avenue of the Americas, Bank of America building in San Francisco, 40 Wall Street, sometimes referred to as the Trump building, right opposite the New York City. Many other places all over the world. So the total is $8,737,540,000.
So he went on a little bit more, but I thought, so first of all, listen to him listing off those properties that are in major cities in America that have amazing values. Obviously, he has some liabilities. He has some loans. He's a businessman, but he also has an amazing balance sheet after you take out his liabilities. And so there's just something in me, and I think I've shared this with you before. It's something in me that really, I get a little rankled when I hear like Lawrence Jones III. You know, he's a good friend. He's now got his own program on Fox Nation, and he's regularly on Fox News doing those kind of man in the street interviews. And he was down in Florida before the actual rally last night. And he was doing man on the street interviews, asking people. I think he was also at the Joe Biden, the rally, and there were people outside protesting the president, and they had a Trump balloon, and they told Lawrence Jones, he happens to be permanently tanned. They told him to go back to Fox News and pick cotton, or go back to where he belonged in Kenya. That's Democrats yelling at a black man who's got a microphone with a Fox News, little holder on it. So much for the tolerance, right? Anyway, they were saying these racial things to him, and he was asking them individually. He said, why don't you support the president when he's a criminal? He deserves to be in jail. They couldn't articulate anything he'd done. He didn't even ask them hard questions. He asked them the kind of questions you would ask a simpleton. And they couldn't even get their reasons for hating Donald Trump right, even though he put the ball in their court. They could have said anything. They could have rattled off a list of things that the president said or did that they didn't like, policies that they didn't like, but that's not it. That's not it at all. So what's fascinating to me about this is that even though President Trump just shared how much money he's making, how well he's doing personally, people will say, well, he don't want to share his taxes because he's not really worth that much, or he's not doing the thing that he should do, or he's hiding something, or he's a criminal. It's pretty clear that's not the case. And we even know now that he shared that he's not losing money like he was in the first year. Now, I've read all the stories about how Trump Tower people don't want to live there anymore. It's not a Tony address like it was before. Where's the shock there in heavily liberal New York City and Manhattan? Manhattan is just chock to the brimming with liberals. So if you really want to be just like completely, like, it's obvious why Trump Tower is no longer the address du jour. When he was Hollywood's darling and every rap star in America was dropping his name in all of their horrible rap music, yeah, you wanted to live at Trump Tower. But now that he's the president of the United States and everybody in New York hates him, then you probably don't want to live at Trump Tower. All he has to do as a real estate mogul is move his apartment out of there, rename the building, and people will move back into it because real estate is scarce in New York City. And those are primo palatial mansion-sized apartments. They're luxury. It's a luxury building. I mean, it's so simple. They probably already have that in the works. He doesn't have to have his name on every single building. That's just a thing he's been doing. He could take his name off every single building and make even more money, that's what's so funny to me is liberals can't even see the unintended consequences when they're smacking them dead in the face. They claim to hate him and want him to not be rich. Well, if that's the case, then stop doing stuff that will ultimately make him even richer than he is now. All right, phone lines are open, 866-963-2037. Jake in Arkansas. Thanks for calling the show.
Yes, ma'am. I hadn't called you in a while because I've been busy with my kids. But I like to tell you, I'm 62-year-old now, and I love the president. I have worked in companies that they shift all my jobs to Mexico. And my last job, I worked there for 28 and a half years, and they outsource everything and send it to Mexico. And working people, we understand that the president doing a good job because we had a job, and if he'd have been in there 4, 5, 8 years ago before Obama got in there, I probably wouldn't have been able to retire. So I didn't get to retire. I got laid off for 28 and a half years in a factory, and they send the job to Mexico. And people don't understand how I wear my Help Make America Great Again hat because I appreciate what he does. And I'm in Arkansas, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I live in Arkansas, and I'll be glad to see Sarah come back. And I know her dad, Governor Huckabee, all them. I'm like 45 miles from them. And I appreciate everything you do also, Stacy.
Thank you, Jake. And I just want to say, if you happen to bump into Sarah, tell her Stacy on the right that she met at the White House Media Row. She probably doesn't remember, but that I'm so totally rooting for her now that she's going to be back at home. And you're right about her dad, Governor Huckabee. I got to meet him on his program. He had me on, and it was, first of all, he's just as nice as he can be. He really is. He's so kind. And we just had the biggest laugh about how we're both fans of Sarah Huckabee because it's his daughter, and it was so cute. So I'm happy for her to have hung around and stuck it out for as long as she did. She just did such an amazing job. And I think why am I saying it again? Because sometimes people just don't get any credit. If you've ever done a good job and felt like you didn't get any credit, you know what I'm talking about. And this is what happens with adults. So I am not, no crying over spilt milk or anything like that, because God says in his word that none of your work is ever wasted, because ultimately, even though you have a boss here on this earth and you're working for him and you have coworkers and all that, and you have to work to the best of your ability for them, ultimately your work performance, you are doing that as unto the Lord. And so when you do a good job and you feel like you're going out and you're leaving without getting any credit, and no, your work is never wasted. God doesn't allow any bit of your work to be wasted. He rewards you. Ultimately, he is the rewarder of everything that you do. And so, but I still think for my part, I would prefer to give credit where credit is due if I can. And with her, it's just such an amazingly difficult job being the press secretary. And then for them to have treated her the way that they did, yelling at her and screaming at her in the room, the way they would overtalk her, the way they would insult her, that's hard. Like, so I don't know about you, but when people insult me, I'm insulted. You know what I mean? I can feel my blood pressure going up. I can feel my fight or flight reflex kicking in. I can feel myself battling with myself. Do I cut this person down to the quick because I have a very sharp, sarcastic wit that can be very, very deadly to people if I don't rein it in? Oh, I've had many a sleepless night over cutting somebody down to the point where that person never speaks to me again because I can do it. So I'm warring with myself. Do I let this thing go, or do I make sure I can go to sleep tonight with a clean conscience and just let them have their way? Let them say whatever they want to me because they can't change me. So she did a good job. All right. When you get back, if you're leaving now, God bless from the heartland. If you're sticking around, it's more Stacy on the Right after this on Urban Family Talk. God bless you, and thanks for making your home at American Family Radio.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
American Family Coffee is coffee with a cause. Not only is it a delicious way to start your day, but it can also wake you up to the idea of supporting the American Family Association through a product you'd normally buy anyway. Choose from morning blend, evening blend, and everything in between. Get your American Family Coffee and support the American Family Association at afastore.net.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. The Trump administration is rolling back emissions rules targeting coal-fired power plants. Rachel Sutherland reports.
Several states and environmental groups expected to challenge the Trump administration's Affordable Clean Energy Rule, which scales back restraints on greenhouse gas emissions. EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler says the policy promotes energy independence, empowers states, and saves money.
Rising energy prices hurt low and middle income Americans the most, particularly senior citizens and minorities.
Environmentalists say the new rule will lead to an increase in carbon emissions. The Trump administration says the Obama policy was too hard on the coal industry. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
A freshman congresswoman who has created a lot of controversy with her support of socialism and uninformed comments has taken her ignorance to a new level. New York Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez compared the U.S. immigration detainment centers to Nazi concentration camps.
The United States is running concentration camps on our southern border, and that is exactly what they are. They are concentration camps. A presidency that creates concentration camps is fascist.
But Congresswoman Liz Cheney of Wyoming is not surprised to hear this type of thing from a left-wing zealot.
We've had a long history, if you go back, at people who really are left-wing zealots, ignoring history, ignoring facts to pursue their causes, to try to convince people of the rightness of their causes. So it's not new that we would have this going on. You know, what is new is that we have it going on from a member of Congress who really seems to have become the intellectual leader of the Democrats here in the House. And again and again and again, we see this total disregard for the facts, and it's a total disregard for the facts in particular about the Holocaust. But also, you know, you see the extent to which her colleagues and the people who are supposed to be leading the Democrats in the House, Speaker Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, won't stand up and criticize what she's saying and condemn those comments and those statements.
A case out of Ohio proves there are too many social justice warriors in academia. Bob Kellogg has more.
A shoplifting incident at Gibson's Bakery in 2016 involving 3 minority individuals from Oberlin College sparked protests from social justice faculty and students. However, one of the accused eventually confessed to the crime. Horace Cooper of Project 21 says the problem is there are too many social justice warriors in academia.
And these people start from the premise that if an individual is a person of color and they make an accusation, we should presumptively assume it is true and it is believed.
Cooper says the problem was compounded by Oberlin's administration canceling classes so hundreds of students could protest in front of the small store.
What the jury said was the university took actions that exacerbated and made worse the circumstance by which this company could have very well gone completely out of business.
Despite having around $1 billion in assets, LegalInsurrection.com reports the school's defense is that it's cash poor and can't pay the settlement. I'm Bob Kellogg.
Imagine losing your way trying to leave a building and not getting out until days later. It happened to a woman in St. Louis. More from Ken Duffy.
The St. Louis Corrections Commissioner says a woman was trapped inside a stairwell at the city jail for more than 2 days. The commissioner tells the St. Louis Dispatch that she was released from the jail this month and tried to leave through a fire exit door. Problem with that is when the door closes behind you, it locks all doors on all floors in that stairwell. And they had no idea she was there because she kept moving around. But 2.5 days later, she was spotted through a door's glass window. She was given food and water, and when asked if she wanted to go to the hospital, she said, "No, I just want to go home." Ken Duffy, Fox News.
General Motors is trying to avoid recalling potentially deadly Takata airbag inflators in thousands of full-size pickup trucks and SUVs for the 4th straight year, leaving owners to wonder if the vehicles are safe to drive. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. We desire to be a movement of time tellers. In 1 Chronicles 12:32 it says, "The sons of Issachar were men who had understanding of the time, to know what Israel ought to do." In these perilous times, God is raising up a people of discernment who will see, pray, and act. We sound the alarm as watchmen. We cry aloud that God's people may be activated for his service. Join the movement at urbanfamilytalk.com.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
The magic wand is common sense. It's experience. If you're going to be in charge of the world's most powerful nation and economy, how about have done a little something before becoming the leader of the free world? I don't know. Doesn't seem that novel. How about if you're going to create jobs? Wouldn't it help if you actually have created jobs in the past? I hear brilliant guys like Joe Biden. The government has failed you. Government has failed you. I go, wait a second. Joe, I actually agree with you. Government has failed them. The problem is, Joe, you've been in government for almost 50 years. If government failed you, maybe you're the problem.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Hey there. Welcome to the program. Thank you for sticking around. We have so much information for you. I have to run down all of the different stuff. We have so much. Republican county executive is ready to sue over a New York bill allowing undocumented, illegal aliens to get driver's licenses. They want to make New York the 12th state in which this can be perfectly fine. President Trump and Chairman Xi will meet during the G20 summit in Osaka, Japan. I have some details about that. I also have the info about this announcement from Apple that they're reducing their Chinese production by 30%. Yeah, 30%. They're reducing their Chinese production. Now, this is huge because really they could do whatever they want. So they have been doing whatever they want, and now they're going to do something different, and the tariffs are part of the reason why. And I can't stress enough, the tariffs. So let's say the tariffs are over by December. Let's just say, we don't know what's going to happen, but let's say December of 2019, all the tariffs against China are over. Well, what has been demonstrated is that, you're rolling the dice. Let's say President Trump is reelected. Then that means China could act up again. The president could reinstitute tariffs. So the way to insulate yourself from that is to take your business out of China, right? Or to reduce it, to begin to move it. So smart. Now, I've heard all this talk about Apple ending the iPhone. I don't understand why Apple would end the iPhone in production, just completely cut it out. Is there something they're going to replace it with? Is there another phone that has achieved utter dominance that is better than the iPhone? I'm saying this as an iPhone user who I'm pretty dissatisfied with the current one that I have. It's their own fault. They wouldn't have to end the iPhone if they would just put the earphone jack back anyway. I don't want to go to Samsung because I have all these other Apple products. So what's going on with them? Like, what is wrong with people when they make something and everybody buys it, then all of a sudden they're like, I'm not making it anymore. It's just idiotic. Okay. And then also, let me run down these other things because I'm just like, I got so much here. So in 24 hours, President Trump raised $24.5 million, basically almost more than all of the other 22 contenders combined have raised in their launches. The highest one, the most amount raised in 24 hours is held by, I think, Bernie Sanders at 6-point-something million. So the president had, now, obviously, it's consolidated. What other people are saying is, well, if you add all the Democratic contenders together, then it's similar in numbers. Yeah, but does that mean every single Democratic contender is going to pile all their money into the campaign of the eventual nominee? I don't know about that. I don't think that's how that works, but it could be. I mean, anything's possible. So the Orlando Sentinel actually announced in an editorial that they are not going to endorse President Trump. Guess what? He beat them and their announcement last time by winning the state of Florida in spite of them not endorsing him. So they can keep their endorsement. Who cares? The other thing that I thought was really, really interesting, some kid got booted from class for saying that there are two genders. Some poor kid was in class and the entire discussion was caught on camera. And the teacher said, get out. And the student said, why? He said, you aren't being inclusive. I know what the authority thinks and point of view. It's very clear that we make no discrimination on the grounds. I'm sorry that you choose to make an issue about a point that is contrary to policy. The student said, I think it's silly to have anything other than two genders. It's not scientific whatsoever. I stated something that I believe in and you kicked me out of class. I wasn't making a discrimination. I was simply saying there are two genders, male and female. Anything else is a personal identification. The teacher then fired back by telling the student to keep that opinion to your own house and not in the school. I am stating what is national school authority policy. Now, where is this guy from? It sounds like he's a communist from Red China. This is an inclusive school. I'm more than one gender in this country. That is my opinion. And if that is an opinion that is acceptable to the school, I'm afraid that yours, which you are saying there's no such thing as anyone other than male and female, is not inclusive. You're choosing to make an issue about this. You're making bad choices. The student then asked if he can go to the research area to resume his classwork, and he's told, no, you stay in the classroom. And he says, thanks for wasting my time. And then right before the end of the video, the teacher stops in his tracks, turns around and tells the student, I'm not allowed to tell you how much of my time you've wasted. Wow. So are we wondering whether this guy's going to get fired? Are we wondering whether this guy is going to be around to keep indoctrinating kids? He's an old guy. sitting up there looking like a communist, yelling at somebody's kid. He'd have me to deal with if he did that to my kid. He's worried about having somebody in the classroom. We would be there together, me and the teacher. And y'all know they would have to come get me. Somebody would have to come get me from up out of that classroom, because I would just be like, I'm staying here, and the only thing I'm talking about is two genders, and I'm not leaving. I'm in this room. We're having this conversation, and the students are going to be here and watch it too. Unbelievable. Unbelievable that people's taxpayer dollars are going to fund this kind of garbage. And speaking of garbage, so let me quickly run down these. Monroe County Executive Cheryl Donalfo, a Republican, is prepared to take New York State to court over the Green Light Bill, which Andrew Cuomo just signed into law this week, which allows illegal aliens to get driver's license. Now, remember, in California, Californians were told that if they allowed illegal aliens to get driver's licenses, it would stop all of these accidents that these illegal aliens were having driving without licenses. Well, it hasn't lowered the number of accidents at all. They still have a huge high accident rate there. They still have a lot of people who drive drunk and kill people there. They still have a lot of vehicular homicide where illegal aliens drive over people sitting at bus stops, people walking down the street on the sidewalk, people coming out of stores. They get run over by drunk illegal aliens, and some of them aren't even drunk. They just run you down. And when you ask them, what has happened here? Illegal aliens often say, people die. That's what they say. Everyone is going to die, and so that person just died, and people die. These are people from other countries who come here to America, and they have no concept of the value of human life. And when they kill someone, they just make it, and they know they can't be touched. They know that because they know they're here illegally. So they know they're going to be deported if they serve any jail time at all. And if they're in a sanctuary state like California, they won't be deported, and they probably won't even be prosecuted. So she's saying, here's her quote, Donalfo. She says, this new policy, in addition to putting state law at odds with federal law, endangers public safety and rewards those who have not followed the rule of law in the first place. And she will not allow licenses to be issued to illegal immigrants here without a fight. She says she's going to fight it. Now, the clerk who will be responsible for issuing these, a Democratic county clerk in Erie County, his last name is Bello. Clerk Bello has said he's not going to do it either. And he's a Democrat. He said, I ain't issuing any driver's license. He says, the governor may remove me from my position, but until he does so, I ain't issuing any licenses to people who are here illegally. Okay. So that's what's going on there. Then you've got President Trump. He's going to meet with Chairman Xi. And what the one thing that I want you to take away from this story is that we don't know what the president's going to say to Chairman Xi. We don't know if he's going to threaten him with even further, tariffs or what have you. But he has in the past threatened that the tariffs that are currently in place are not the end of it, that there could be more. He has also threatened more consequential actions as it relates to non-tariff barriers, IP protection, forced technology transfers as a result of China reneging on the previous agreement. So Beijing is under threat from President Trump. Now, what does all this mean? Well, it's possible that President Trump could end up, really holding this over his head, and that the Chinese could just, grit and bear it because they're concerned that President Trump might not be reelected. So they could basically take a wait and see attitude and just continue to bear up under the current tariff regime. Kind of thinking, you know what, he's going into the election period. He's not going to level any more tariffs. He's really just wanting to win his next election. And we don't think he's going to win anyway. Well, I think that's probably what they're going to do. But it's possible that they will just say they're not going to have any more negotiations beyond this G20 pull aside, because their traditional and cultural position is normally that they don't meet and negotiate while they're being threatened. So there's a lot more involved here. But suffice it to say, the election, it doesn't necessarily help the president's bargaining position. But in Trump's case, I don't think it hurts it either. It just depends on how he approaches it and what their exchange is. I don't know what their exchange is going to be. So before we get to this audio of McConnell making this statement about slavery, so one of the reporters asked Mitch McConnell if Trump or Congress should apologize for slavery, which I believe Bill Clinton did. But anyway, it's some audio of him talking about that. But I first want to just add something on to yesterday's discussion about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez making these statements to her millions of followers online about how there are concentration camps at the southern border. Now, first of all, logic dictates that people, I don't care what country you're from, you don't march willingly 2,000 miles from your country to another country and wait in line to be put into a concentration camp. So while the conditions are deplorable, they're rolling the dice that they will live in those deplorable conditions for about 21 days and then be released into America. And that's the goal, getting into America. That is the end goal of all of these people. So the idea that she's calling them concentration camps, it's ludicrous. I tweeted her about it today. So I've been to a concentration camp, one of the ones in Germany, where we rode for hours to get there, and I took the tour with my parents. It was like a weekend MWR trip, and it was unbelievable. This was decades ago. I was a kid when we took this tour, and I still remember it. If I sit quietly, I can still feel it's like this eerie silence that covered the whole place. So I don't know if it was because of where we were or that we knew where we were or out of respect, but we all just used hushed tones through the entire tour. And the smell of what they did to the people there is still there. So when you're taking the tour and it's the weightiness of all of the people who were killed there. It changes you. When you go on these tours, you go to Auschwitz or Dachau, it changes you. Because you realize that everything the Bible says about the depravity of man, it's so true. It's so inexorably true. You cannot escape man's depravity when you're walking in the place where millions of people were snuffed out, experimented on, treated worse than animals. So you got to put that up against what she's saying, which is that America is intentionally putting people into concentration camps, preparing to kill them. That we are currently, under the presidency of Donald Trump, exercising people into concentration camps. Now, these holding facilities are not good environments. They're not what we would normally want people to have to experience, but we don't have any choice here. If any court would reverse the Flores decision, or if we could just turn them around, they set foot on American soil, so what? They're on American soil, so what? It's liberal judges that have put us in this place, and Democrats are keeping us here by refusing to negotiate with the president on anything. They won't even give him any funding to create more of these holding centers, which I actually don't agree with that. I don't agree with building more detention centers. All that does is encourage more people to come here. So her statement is meant to activate the crazies within the Democratic Party, the far left progressives that follow her, to create a situation in which people are harmed, some kind of terrorist act or something. That's what she's gunning for. And I'm not trying to malign her. I honestly believe that's what she just did. It's put a call out for somebody crazy to do something horrible. We'll be back with more.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You know, I'm asked often what my favorite part of the Holy Land tour is. And that's like choosing between your children, right? That's very hard to pick just one place to see or to visit that's the most special. But to me, it's the boat ride on the Sea of Galilee, I guess, is number one. That's just a very special day because you know that's exactly where Jesus was, the Sea of Galilee. We're seeing the same terrain that Jesus saw. But there's so much more to our visit to the Holy Land, our trip there in March 2020. We'll go to Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Jericho, Nazareth, and on and on. If you want more information on the tour to Israel, go to twholyland.com. That's twholyland.com.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
Religious liberty in this nation is in limbo at the moment. Some court cases uphold religious liberty. Other cases set it aside as unimportant. Some sectors of our society advocate the American tradition of religious liberty, while other parts of our culture see it as merely a ruse to discriminate against other Americans. Last year, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Baker Jack Phillips in the Masterpiece Cake decision. The justices were critical of the way he was treated by the Colorado state officials. That seemed like a victory for religious liberty. But earlier this month, the Washington State Supreme Court apparently disregarded the ruling by the Supreme Court. They doubled down in their decision against the florist Barronelle Stutzman, who for religious reasons did not want to provide flowers for a same-sex ceremony. And while we're talking about bakers, we might mention the ongoing legal case of Aaron and Melissa Klein. The state of Oregon fined them $135,000, drove them to bankruptcy, and ordered them not to speak about their beliefs on marriage. On the other hand, you have the Trump administration that has provided a strong legal foundation for religious liberty. Last month, for example, the Department of Health and Human Services announced rules that protected health care professionals who might refuse to participate in morally questionable practices because of their religious conscience. In the popular culture, you have various members of Congress and pundits talking about the importance of religious liberty. At the same time, you have other politicians and pundits that put the words religious liberty in scare quotes. The Supreme Court can do this country a big favor by continually ruling in favor of religious liberty in the cases before it and others they have yet to consider. And those of us in the general public need to continue to speak out for religious liberty and educate people around us about its importance. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kirby's booklet, A Biblical View on Anti-Semitism, go to viewpoints.info/anti-Semitism. Viewpoints.info/anti-Semitism.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Yeah, I don't think reparations for something that happened 150 years ago for whom none of us currently living are responsible is a good idea. We've, tried to deal with our original sin of slavery by fighting a civil war, by passing landmark civil rights legislation. We've elected an African-American president. I think we're always a work in progress in this country, but no one currently alive was responsible for that. And I don't think we should be trying to figure out how to compensate for it. First of all, it'd be pretty hard to figure out who to compensate. We've had waves of immigrants as well who've come to the country and experienced dramatic discrimination of one kind or another. So no, I don't think reparations are a good idea.
And the point that he's making is being everything else he said is being eliminated and not listened to just because he mentioned that we'd elected the first black president. And so people are taking that to mean that if you elect the black president, that means that there are no more racial reconciliations that need to be made. There's a young man who writes for Quillette.com, who's not a conservative by any means, who testified before the House committee today on reparations. And he was saying, he's descended from slaves, just as I am, but he's also a child of privilege. He's in college right now. He writes for Quillette.com, but he's in college right now, going to an Ivy League university. He grew up affluent, and he says, why should I get reparations over someone who's paycheck to paycheck, who's descended from slaves? Why should I get that when I don't need it? And he's saying the people who actually would be most likely to deserve it are his grandparents, people who actually grew up under Jim Crow, like my parents. My parents grew up in the Jim Crow South, and they experienced all kinds of ridiculous. Sometimes when they've talked to me about it, it's so heartbreaking the way they were treated. It makes you angry, and it turns the part of you that hates injustice and wants to punish someone. It just turns that on. And that is why I don't believe we should have reparations. Because if I feel that way 10 years ago, 20 years ago, today, whenever my parents would talk about that, and I ask them about it, it's never been where they've poured it into me and tried to make me feel terrible. It's been that they've mentioned something, and then I say, well, wait a minute, wasn't Jim Crow in effect when you were a kid? Yeah, it was, but they always papered over it until I finally said, I remember specifically in high school asking my parents about it and seeing the change in their demeanor when they were telling me this. It's just unbelievable what they went through. So what good does it do for us to have this conversation right now? What good does it do to go over these old wounds and rake them up, to take all of these hurts and things from the past that people have gotten over and to rake them up and dig them out and just, start poking and prodding and making people relive that stuff and then pouring it into the rest of us who didn't live it, but we feel the injustice of it? And then what about the other groups of people in this country, like the Irish, for instance, who were also enslaved, also experienced really horrible circumstances and hardships? And there are others. There are other groups of Americans who have experienced awful things. Is that who we are? I love how Barack Obama he would just trot his little old self out. That's not who we are. And everybody would be like slow clapping, and he's just so amazing. Well, how about this? That is what America was at one point, but we are no longer. And every minute we spend talking about reparations is not only a waste of time, it's burning valuable energy and time we can't get back on something that we can't heal it that way. The only way to heal is to keep walking forward, not looking back. And so it's such an unpopular position to hold. Black people really feel like you're betraying them if you're black and you're not, for reparations. But I'm not. I had one of the editors of Salon magazine tweeting me this morning when I said, black Democrats just want to keep black people down by focusing on reparations and race and the fact that we were once slaves. That's just all they want to do to us. Just keep us, if they could just keep us there. And she said that the reparations are not it's not only about slavery. Oh. I lit her up. She tried to come up into my timeline and tell me something. And I can't tell if she's black or whatever she is. I can't tell. And I don't care. I don't care what. She can't tell me anything about slavery or my history in that area. Our family, on both sides of my family and on my husband's side, we've all traced our lineage back. So I know the name of my first ancestor who was on this soil, sold into slavery like a piece of furniture. I know his name and the year and date that it happened. And I know that his grandson was the one who was a slave and was emancipated and walked as a free man before he died. I know all of that history. So I don't need some Democrat with a chip on their shoulder thinking they know something about me, telling me that I need reparations. I don't need a handout from the federal government. I'm not a victim. In fact, I would dare say that God has made us victorious because that is the background that I come from on one side. The other side was free blacks. Immigrated to this country just like anybody else and was running around doing whatever they were doing up in Chicago. And then, the rest is the story. So I don't need anyone. I don't care what color they are, what kind of tan they've got. I don't care what their political bent is. I don't need anybody telling me who I am or what kind of victim I am or that I need something from the government. I need the same stuff from the government that everybody else needs. I need the government to protect and defend the Constitution of this country. I need the government to honor my rights that are God-given and protected by our Constitution. I need the government to do the things that are remanded to it in Article 2, Section 8. I need the states to do the stuff that's remanded to them. I don't need any of the rest of that stuff. And for people who think they do, just look at the other people who've gotten huge infusions of cash and they didn't know how to manage their money. It won't be good for you, but for a year or two before you're broke again and looking for some new way to be a new victim for some other handout. I just find it interesting when someone reaches out to me on online social media and tries to tell me what I do or don't know about myself. Maybe you don't know where you come from. Maybe you haven't traced your ancestry back. Maybe you're not a Christian and you haven't been bought and redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. You don't understand your positioning under Jesus Christ, that you are a co-heir with him and that you are no longer a slave to sin and death, but that you have been set free. You're a royal priesthood clothed in white, and that only God can determine what you will or won't do. That the gates of hell cannot prevail against Jesus Christ. And because of that, because you're co-heirs with him, that he is seated at the right hand of the Father, continually pouring out his blood on the mercy seat on your behalf so that you can approach the Father and ask and have your prayers answered. If that's not enough for you, No handouts ever going to get it done. The government could give you $1 billion a year and you'd find a way to fritter it away and burn through it, and you'd still be looking for more, because that spirit of mismanagement and inability to actually make things happen on your own, that's going to permeate and eat up everything that comes to you. No government can overcome that spirit in you. So, just like I told the salon chick, she could get over herself and stop trying to tell me about myself, because she does not know me. I don't want to see or hear any of us and I say us, people who consider themselves to be Republicans. If you are not affiliated, I'm talking to you too. We don't have time to waste sitting up, indulging these Democrats in their attempt to further bring down black people in America. Notice how all the other people with the permanent tan who come here from Ghana and Haiti and Nigeria and other places, South Africa, far-flung locales, they come here with their permanent tans and they just hit the ground running. They're graduating from Princeton and Harvard. They're starting businesses. They have the same test-taking scores. Some of them even outscore white Americans. They're right up there with the Asians. These people are coming here and they're like, I'm sorry, oppression, racism, what? Yeah, so there's some people who don't like the way I look. I'm in my own community, but I'm still going to get that education and make something happen. They're having those big $100,000 weddings. They're starting businesses and they have their own communities that they're setting up and they're killing it. And we're sitting up here talking about reparations, wallowing in the dregs of what once was the sin of this country, slavery, but is no more. So yeah, everybody's mad at Mitch McConnell for pointing out that we elected President Barack Hussein Obama. But are you kidding me? If this country was totally racist, how ever would he have been elected? Like, how could that happen? So I tell you what, please let me help you to help yourself, to help me to help you. That is not something that is ever going to get us anywhere. Because I guarantee you, if they could get it done, all it will do is further divide this country. It will just make other Americans angry, and it won't help anyone. So now I want to go to Kudlow, talking about the Dow surging after President Trump teased his G20 pull aside with China. It's number 4.
The United States wants to continue the conversations about structural changes regarding intellectual property theft and forced technology transfers and market openings and tariffs. We're looking for an enforceable agreement, as we always have. That's absolutely vital. So all of those general topics will be on the table. I think the market is saying better that they are talking than not talking. No results are guaranteed. I think people know that. But it's not unusual for us to communicate, by the way, at lower levels, whether the principles are hot or cold. So I'm sure that Bob Lighthizer, Ambassador Lighthizer and his group will be in touch with the Chinese people. I'm quite certain of that.
Got it. So what about that optimism in the stock market? Is that warranted?
Well, I don't want to judge. All I'll say is I think a lot of market investors think it's a good thing that talk is better than no talk. There are other things going on in the market. The economy's still pretty good. Interest rates seem to be coming down, et cetera, et cetera. But China trade is a key topic, so it's alive. And I guess folks want to keep hope alive.
So keeping hope alive is, I think, the very minimal that we're seeing happen here. It's look, if we could get China to behave not as a bad actor, but as a good actor, if we could get them to just say, you know what, we've had all this time to steal your intellectual property and we've gotten a huge benefits out of it, but now it's a new day. And so we're going to do the deals we need to do because we want to keep the manufacturing here. That would be one thing, but they're obviously not going to go down softly. They're just not going to. So it's going to be a very interesting dance between the two nations on how to get it done. But the most important thing that we can take with us from listening to Kudlow or any of the others who are talking about this, Charles Payne over at Fox Business, he's had some really great informative conversations about this negotiation between America and China. I have to point out that we wouldn't even be having this negotiation because Hillary Clinton was bought and paid for by China. They'd had her come over there and speak so many times. They were just waiting on her to get in the White House. And when she was in there, they were just going to be like puppet masters, transferring our intellectual property, moving our stuff. And I want to also mention, I read this deep dive article about how Chinese researchers are now coming under heavy scrutiny by the FBI for their relationships with China, because a lot of them are researchers for hospitals in the United States. They live here. Many of them are American citizens. But if they're ethnically Chinese, meaning they immigrated here and got their college educations here and then went to work for a research hospital and got their PhDs and et cetera, and then they go back to China and they get these fellowships and honorary positions at Chinese universities, it's to facilitate the research. And some of it has been very, very helpful to Americans in the realm of cancer and, different diseases and medications that they've been able to bring forward. But what they're now saying is that the Chinese government uses these researchers to steal innovations and information from American universities and bring it to Chinese universities, and that they're seeing an uptick in the number of people who are ethnically Chinese who come here and get educations and work in our research universities, have access to classified information, and then go back to China, move their entire family back there, and take these really well-paid posh jobs. They even have, it's like called the 1,000 Trees Initiative or something that the Chinese are running, where they are actually trying to get ethnically Chinese people and Chinese Americans to reconsider living here in America and instead bring their knowledge and expertise back to China. The Chinese are trying to steal anything they can get from America by hook or by crook, whether it's the actual people who have the knowledge, the information that the people have access to. They're stealing it from these universities and giving it back to China. And in the tech sector, especially the parts of the tech sector where you're talking about artificial intelligence and new products and new ideas that are being launched in these kind of venture capital like lab environments, they're coming in with investments and saying, we'll give you everything you need, all the seed money you need, which it's coming from the Chinese government, but it's coming in the form of Chinese investors in Silicon Valley. And they're saying, we'll give you whatever you need, but you have to give us unlimited access to the research and data as it's being created, and you have to allow us to have complete and utter access to it, meaning they can go in and copy and paste it and send it back to China if they want to, because they're the funding mechanism for it. That's the environment that we're in. And no one is more up to date on it than President Trump. And that is why you see him making these moves where he's on the cutting edge of this thing, trying to extract us from these horrible arrangements. And he can't do that if he's done in 18 months, because a Democrat president would just say, you know what, China, you just need to do whatever you need to do and make sure that we can still get our cheap labor over there. And that's fine with us. We'll go back to the way things were. None of the Democrats care anything about protecting American intellectual property. So it's fascinating. Which, by the way, I didn't get to the details on the reduction in production targets for China by Apple and their subsidiaries. So we'll get to that as well. When we come back, you're going to hear Secretary Pompeo updating us on the U.S. response to Iran's aggression. Keep it here.
Hi, this is Steve Tiber with 8 Days of Hope. We've been all over the country helping disaster victims who lose everything.
It's truly a blessing. I really don't have the words to express.
And yet they see a glimmer of hope when a volunteer shows up.
Building the home, that's the second reason we're here. The number one reason is to share the gospel and give them hope.
It's everything that's right in America. I mean, it really represents the best that we have to offer.
That's one of the main reasons for doing it, is being able to be the hands and feet of Jesus and coming out and working with so many wonderful volunteers.
I just feel like it's important in this day and age to teach a child how to serve.
Please go to our website, 8daysofhope.com, and click on Get Involved. Submit your email address, and the next time we go anywhere with a disaster, we'll invite you to come along as well.
I love coming in the job room because you can see these pieces of paper. They aren't just a piece of paper. Right. It's a family that's hurting, and it's a gospel opportunity.
I just thank God, for this moment. I'll be back in my home, and I know it's going to be awesome.
Come love others with 8 Days of Hope.
Hi, this is Jim Stanley, General Manager of American Family Radio, here to tell you that change is on the air.
Excuse me, Jim. I believe the saying would be changes in the air.
Well, that's true, too. We've got some big changes coming up, and you'll hear them on the air.
Oh, right, boss. Go ahead.
As I was saying, changes are coming, and you'll hear them on the air beginning Monday, June 24th, here on American Family Radio.
So, do they affect me? I mean, are we cool here? I mean, we're cool, right?
One goal is that we're hoping that believers will come to learn more about prayer and more about the vital place it's to have in the life of every single believer.
Pastor Joseph Parker of the Hour of Intercession.
Each and every one of us is called to live a life given to prayer. All of us are wise to make prayer a big part of our individual lives, and we're wise to make it a big part of our life in our families and in our homes.
Listen weekday afternoons at 1 Central here on Urban Family Talk.
This is Fox on Justice. A former reality show star is president of the United States, so it shouldn't be a surprise that another former reality show star would be studying for a law degree and advocating on behalf of ex-convicts hoping to restart their lives.
These people want to work.
Kim Kardashian West came to the White House last week to lend her support to a campaign to promote the hiring of former prisoners. She announced a rideshare program.
Formerly incarcerated people will be gifted gift cards so that they can get rides to and from job interviews, to and from jobs, family members.
Kardashian West said it's a good idea for society, too.
The more opportunity we have and that they have and the support that we help give them, the safer everyone will be, and the recidivism rate will be continue to just get lower.
With Fox on Justice, Hank Weinblum, Fox News.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
The purpose of my visit was to come down here and make sure that the State Department and the Department of Defense were deeply coordinated across a whole broad range of issues. We certainly discussed the ongoing tension in the Gulf, but we talked about a much broader range of issues. If we're to deliver at the State Department on the President's diplomatic objectives, we have to be tightly woven with our military. And I appreciate General McKenzie, General Clark, and their teams spending time with me and my team today to make sure we were doing just that. We had extensive conversations about tactical, operational, strategic levels of work between our two organizations to make sure that when we present options, alternatives, policy recommendations to President Trump, we're doing so in a way that is coherent and consistent and leads the President to a fuller understanding of the challenges and opportunities connected to decisions that he makes. We certainly, as I said, spoke about the challenges in Iran. We talked about the CENTCOM decision that Secretary Shanahan and the President approved to move 1,000 more Americans into theater to make sure that we're in a position to do the right thing, which is to continue to work to convince the Islamic of Iran that we are serious and to deter them from further aggression in the region.
Wow. So that is Secretary of State Pompeo updating on the U.S. response. And it makes sense to move troops there and to basically display a show of force to ensure that they understand who they're playing around with. You know, go ahead, play. You do what you're going to do, but understand what the repercussions might be. And no, the president doesn't want to go to war with Iran. Quite the opposite. He does not want to go to war with Iran. The most important thing that can happen is for us to stabilize and normalize those relations. But sometimes that involves people kind of pushing buttons to see exactly what works and what doesn't. You know, they're poking the bear. They want to see what will happen to us if we do this. And what kind of metal is President Trump made of? He doesn't have the support of his entire country. He doesn't even have the support of his entire government. He's fighting his own people as much as he might be fighting us. What can he do? And the president has to answer that. And I think that's what he's doing. So, all right. So there's a little bit more. I have a few more pieces of news here. So first of all, I talked about this iPhone reduction in production in China. So the regime is actually working. Apple is going to shift 30% of their production out of China, not only due to the tariffs, but also because of uncertainty over the future of trade between both countries. All of this comes as Foxconn executives warned that the biggest maker of iPhones in China was ready to shift production elsewhere. Now, as for Apple, the word from Nikkei is that the suppliers of iPhones, iPads, MacBooks, and Apple EarPods have all drawn up plans to move 15 to 30% of their production outside of the mainland, with India, Vietnam, Mexico, and Malaysia looking like the top alternatives. So at this point, even if the Trump administration does not go ahead and slap tariffs on an additional $300 billion in Chinese goods, Foxconn, Pegatron, Wistron, Quanta Computer, iPad maker, Compol Electronics, and AirPods makers Inventec, Luxshare ICT, and Gortec have all been asked by Apple to evaluate options outside of China. So millions of jobs are going to leave China in the near term. Also, they're saying that the lower birth rates in China, their demographic numbers are also playing a role here. But Nikkei reports that their request was triggered by the protracted trade tensions between Washington and Beijing. But multiple sources say that even if the spat is resolved, there will be no turning back. Apple has decided the risks of relying so heavily on manufacturing in China, as it has done for decades, are too great and even rising. Wow. Okay. A lower birth rate, higher labor costs, the risk of overly centralizing its production in one country are adverse factors, and those are not changing. With or without the final round of the $300 billion tariff, Apple is following the big trend to diversify production, giving itself more flexibility. They're actually, this is a huge change for them because they've built so much of their manufacturing base in China over the past 2 decades. China is able to rally hundreds of thousands of skilled workers at short notice to fill rapidly rising orders, and this happened as Apple was growing. We talked about this, how I read that story about how you literally have 100,000 screws that you need made, in 48 hours. And in China, they can marshal people to work, 12-hour shifts, 8-hour shifts, whatever, 24 hours a day. They can literally put these bodies into factories and get them working and get the screw order completed within, 3 days. And in America, it would take, a month or what have you. So what they're doing is, even with that, they're going to have to pull out. China actually built an extensive and complex ecosystem of components, logistics, and talent around the sites where Apple manufactures their components. 5 million Chinese jobs rely on Apple. 5 million. Isn't that amazing? Capitalism in a communist country employing 5 million people. One company. I wonder if somebody has somewhere a tally of all of the jobs in China that are due to American companies. Like, how many of their people would absolutely not have a job if our company wasn't there, if any of our companies weren't there? So inside that $5 million number are 1.8 million software and iOS app developers, according to a study available on the company's website. Apple itself employs 10,000 staff in China. So obviously replicating a network such as that elsewhere is going to take time. This isn't something that happens overnight. It's not like when we decide we're not going to shop at, Target anymore and we just immediately drive over to Walmart and start shopping there. This is going to take a long time to actually transition. But what's interesting about it is once the decision is made, as we all know with businesses, when we look at businesses and how they operate, once they've made a decision about something, everything within the company shifts to thinking about that new direction that they're taking. And I find it fascinating because you see it happen at small companies. You see it happen at huge companies. When companies announce they have a new vision, obviously the new vision is not something that they came up with the night before. It's been months in the making. But when the announcement hits, anyone who's an outsider who comes to interact with the company, maybe a supplier or a subcontractor who wants to get in on this new directional shift, when they come in, they find that every area, every department, they've all got their marching orders and they've made their plans and they've gone back and forth and argued and, kind of gotten the nitty gritty details flushed out. And it's a plan, not just for the next week or the next 30 days, but it's how they're going to get everything done this quarter, the next quarter, and the one after that, and contingency planning and some forward-looking kind of, maybe it's just a framework for the year after and the year after that. And everything they're doing is now moving towards that. Relationships and things that were in the other direction, those are shifted. Can you go in this new direction with us? And if you can't, well, then we have to find someone who can. Everything's now moving in that direction. So to have these suppliers for Apple products, to be told by Apple, we need 15 to 30% of what we're doing in your area to move outside of China, these conversations are ongoing, these meetings are ongoing, and these people are going to make that happen because these businesses rely on their relationship with Apple. What other choice do they have? They want to keep the business. So it's so interesting to me that the Chinese, and maybe it's due to the communist nature of their thought patterns and the way that they deal with everyone, the way they view the world, that makes them unable to see that in business, yes, they do have room to negotiate, but they've been negotiating for a long time now. And now they're at a place where they literally are going to lose all of this business over stealing from us. But I guess this goes back to if you're a thief, if you're an intellectual property thief, or whatever the kind of thief you are, you're not going to be able to be wise and see the handwriting on the wall that you're about to lose everything that you thought. Basically, the pipeline for the theft that they so enjoy, the gravy train, it's about to be shut down. It's fascinating. So the president ripped the Democrats last night for their hatred, their prejudice, their rage. I think it was so appropriate. They needed to be ripped. They need to be ripped some more. The ripping was not enough. Biden actually told voters at his little mini rally, because, I mean, let's face it. And I'm not I'm not exaggerating. Here in St. Louis, if we just announce we're having just any old kind of thing, we can get more than 90 people together. The last rally we did was with Jim Hoft of the Gateway Pundit, and it was about the wall. And I spoke for about 4 minutes, and there were other people. This is a whole list of people who spoke. And we had about 250 people there. On a Saturday, I think it was a Saturday, it might have been a Friday morning, in Clayton at a park. I mean, I'm telling you, for him to only be able to get 90 people together, I'm just like, how can you tell voters you think you can win Texas and Florida, and in Florida you can't get 90, you can't get 250 people together? He should have been able to at least muster up 1,000 people to come listen to him talk. I don't know if it's because they already know he's going to be the nominee, or they just don't. I don't know. So obviously the president's numbers are in, and the rally last night broke records. Morning Joe, I didn't get this audio for you because I hate the way they talk about President Trump. You can dislike somebody without losing all of your integrity, right? They were saying that horrible things, comparing him to Elvis at the end of his life, saying that he was drunk on vodka, Quaaludes, just the worst kind of stuff. Even Mika Brzezinski, who can be pretty foul herself, was trying to rein them in, but it just wasn't working. They were on a roll and they were just awful. So MSNBC's Chris Matthews, he had a little moment on air where he was upset because they were interviewing an Ohio voter, and the voter is a business owner, and he said, Trump is showing results. I run a small business, my numbers are growing, and I want to see him do more. So they're just a ton of different things that are going on, a lot of news, and I feel like one of the biggest stories that maybe I haven't talked about it enough is this whole push to get illegal immigrants driver's licenses, because driver's licenses are the primary means by which people identify themselves at the polls. And so poll workers are not aware that a driver's license from an illegal alien, like if you have an address and you have a driver's license and some Democrat group like the Acorn offshoots that still exist has registered you to vote, These people are voting. They had, I think, 175,000 of them vote in Florida, or not Florida, I think it was Texas. In any case, we found many instances of people voting illegally, being in the country illegally, having driver's license and voting. And so this is the plan. Why do you think they want this unfettered immigration? So, look, the idea is you ignore what voters want, which is what they're doing in New York right now with that story we talked about earlier, and you just push this through. You let the illegal aliens have driver's licenses. And then later when they're voting, who can say what? Who can do what? So that's what we're seeing. I hope it becomes a political liability for them, but there's really no way to tell, because if logic was still in play here, Democrats would already be seeing really negative consequences from having these positions anyway. But they're not. Not only are they not having negative consequences, it's almost as if there's a cone of silence around all the bad stuff they're doing all over the country, and that people are just ignoring it and they're getting away with it. It brings us to, I had a friend send me something about the delusion, which is, this is biblical, where people become deluded by basically giving themselves over to, you give yourself over to sin and depravity, and you refuse to heed the warnings and anything like that. And then the Lord gives you over to that kind of basic delusion where you literally, you can't see the truth. And so what happens after that is, as you become more and more deceived, you're unable to decipher between lies and the truth. And we see a lot of that going on the left right now, where people are just, they only want to talk about racism, illegal immigration, and reparations, and they don't care about the truth of what's happening in this country. All right. That's the show for today. Have a nice evening. Enjoy. And I'll be back with you tomorrow, and you'll have more Stacy on the Right. God bless.